What is the creepiest disappearance case that you know about? Brandon Lawson. He ran out of gas on the highway in the middle of the night and called his brother to come help him. Shortly after, he called 911 and reported that someone had chased him into the woods and that he needed police. Eventually, his brother and one police officer arrive at the scene and find his truck abandoned, but no sign of Brandon. Brandon calls his brother and says he's bleeding and is 10 minutes away from his truck. That was the last anyone ever heard from him, and searches of the area turned up empty. Long, but worth the read. The Jamison family. The Jamison family, 2 adults, 1 young daughter, was interested in purchasing a plot of land in Oklahoma. They drive out in their pickup truck to check it out. Truck is later found abandoned. $32,000 cash found in truck, along with the Jamisons' IDs, wallets, mobile phones, and a GPS. The family dog was also left in the truck and was extremely malnourished. A camera is discovered. The final picture was of their daughter, 6-year-old Madison, who looks somewhat distressed. Security footage is uncovered, with the family appearing trance-like and not speaking to one another. The Jamison skeletal remains are found years later, dumped less than 3 miles from where the pickup truck was originally discovered. Remains show no signs of struggle. So, was there any explanation to what happened? No official explanation. Theories range from a drug deal gone wrong, even though no money was stolen, to being murder by a satanic cult. Truly bizarre. Are satanic cults really ever a culprit? I feel like they are often a scapegoat. I remember reading about the disappearance of Susan Powell in a similar one of these threads a few months back. It's a wild story. Husband and wife, with 2 young sons, have a bad marriage. He's abusive and controlling, plus at one point they had to move because the husband's father was in love with the wife. Things get so bad she starts fearing for her life. Then one night the whole family disappears, only to have the husband come back a few days later, saying that he and the boys went camping and he had no idea where the wife was. As the investigation into what happened to the wife goes on, the husband acts more and more suspiciously, eventually moving with the kids to live with his father that they moved away from in the first place, but then lost custody of the kids because the father got caught with a bunch of child porn and hundreds of creeper shots of Susan. Finally, during a supervised visit, the husband grabs his sons from the social worker, holes himself up inside his house, and then blows it up, killing himself and both the boys. And all the while, they never solved the mystery of what happened to Susan Powell, and she is still listed as missing, although presumed murdered and dumped somewhere by the husband. It's a sad, crazy tale. IIRC. One of the boys told the police that mom was camping with them, or something about mommy being in the trunk. The Sauter children disappearance. On Christmas Eve, December 24, 1945, a fire destroyed the Sauter home in Fayetteville, West Virginia. At the time, it was occupied by George Sauter, his wife Jenny, and 9 of their 10 children. During the fire, George, Jenny, and 4 of the 9 children escaped. The bodies of the other 5 children have never been found. The fire was blamed on faulty wiring. However, one of the jurors involved in the inquest had, at one point, threatened George Sauter, saying his house would be burned and his children destroyed. The Sauters continued to question the official findings about the fire. They wondered why, if it had been caused by an electrical problem, the family's Christmas lights had remained on throughout the fire's early stages when the power should have gone out. A telephone repairman told the Sauters that the house's phone line had not been burned through in the fire, as they had initially thought, but cut by someone who had been willing and able to climb 14 feet up the pole. A missing ladder belonging to the Sauters was found at the bottom of an embankment soon after the incident. A man whom neighbors had seen stealing a block and tackle from the property around the time of the fire was identified and arrested. He admitted to the theft and claimed he had been the one who cut the phone line, thinking it was a power line, but denied having anything to do with the fire. However, no record identifying him exists, and why he would have wanted to cut any utility lines to the Sauter house while stealing the block and tackle has never been explained. Jenny Sauter also had trouble accepting Morris's belief that all traces of the children's bodies had been burned completely in the fire. Many of the household appliances had been found, still recognizable, in the ash. A local crematorium supported her theory. The truck's failure to start was also considered. George Sauter believed they had been tampered with, perhaps by the same man who stole the block and tackle and cut the phone line. The only bone fragments ever found on the site were a few human vertebrae fragments, although these were confirmed to have never been exposed to fire. You missed the weirdest part. The police chief said he found one of the children's heart in and buried it in a metal box. He told the Sodders where it was and they dug it up and had it tested, and it was a cow's liver. The police chief fessed up and said basically, "Yeah, I faked it. I thought it would bring them comfort." What the frick? Yeah, finding your missing child's heart in a buried metal box will definitely put them at ease. In about 1971, a lady in Boca Raton reported her daughter missing. Her boyfriend was also missing along with his van. At some point over the years, she hired private detectives to look for the two. At one point she was told they were living in San Francisco. She was once told her daughter had a child. She never could understand why her daughter broke off contact and continued to look for her daughter. Along the streets in South Florida there are usually drainage canals that drain the Everglades to the ocean. Some are quite deep. In about 2000 they dredged a canal not far from her house and found the van. Daughter and boyfriend were both inside. All those years they were just down the street. At least she had closure. That private detective is a piece of shit. Gene Parmesan, at your service. Gene. Dorothy Jane Scott. Young divorced mom working at a head shop. One day at a meeting a co-worker falls ill, so Dorothy and another co-worker take him to the hospital. It is found that he has a black widow bite. Following his treatment, Dorothy goes to get the car. When the co-workers make it outside they see Dorothy's car speeding towards them. She doesn't stop, and that is the last time anyone sees her. The next day her car is found torched, but she is nowhere to be found. Over the next few years her parents start receiving taunting phone calls. Calls asking if Dorothy is home, a call claiming to know where she is, and so on. 4 years later a construction worker finds charred bones next to a highway. Upon forensic investigation, it is learned that they are canine bones and the bones of Dorothy Jane Scott. It is deducted that they had been there for 2 years. Angela Hammond. While driving home, Angela Hammond stops at a phone booth to call her fiancé Rob and describes a creepy-looking man in a pickup truck in the parking lot. Her fiancé suddenly hears Angela scream and drives into town to check on her. He passes by a pickup truck and sees Angela struggling with an unidentified man, but after attempting a pursuit, the transmission on his truck gives out, and this is the last anyone ever sees of Angela. She still hasn't been found and went missing in 1991. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. I can't wrap my head around how at the same time practically anything you do is monitored, recorded and stored, but we somehow still manage to lose a whole fricking passenger aircraft. The ocean is fricking big. I get that you're not gonna find much of it back after it crashes into an unknown part of the ocean. But how it got to that point? Like, we have countless satellites, radars, GPS and whatever other airspace monitoring systems everywhere running 24/7, yet this plane just manages to disappear into thin air and no one is able to even trace it down nor relocate it whatsoever. We genuinely lost the whole thing. Mind you, that had only just left Malaysian airspace and was in Vietnamese airspace when communication was lost, so they weren't even in the middle of the ocean or far from civilization. The ocean is really freaking big, and planes are very small. People seriously underestimate the size of the Pacific Ocean. Mainly because most maps show it cut in half. Like this. Try this. That is how freaking big it is. Then add in how deep it is. About 6 kilometers. Now add an ocean current scattering the debris as it sinks 6 kilometers to the ocean floor. Like, comment, and share. Reddit Story Topper. Subscribe now.